Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is context. You may think this is deja vu all over again. We were trying to do context yesterday, but had some technical difficulties. So we're back with round two. So before we get started, though, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just press our palms together. Rub your fingers against your palms. Rub your palms together. Feel the friction, the heat, the texture, and allow yourselves to feel that sensation bringing you present into your physical body, this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good morning, Rosalind. We're trying to context again as today's topic because we got kind of interrupted yesterday. So when we talk about context, we're kind of creating the container through which we interpret the world. And I forgot to say, I'm really glad you're here, Rosalind, and everybody else who's joining us. So welcome, welcome. So the context that we create for our lives, and oftentimes that we live through unconsciously without recognizing what the context is, really shapes our experience and our capacity for certain experience. And so when we deliberately engage in creating context, then we have a greater ability to shape the experience of our lives. So one example of context. Good morning, Lisa. So good to have you here with us this morning. We're revisiting the topic context because yesterday we got a little bit derailed. So I think it's important enough that we get to discuss it more thoroughly. So I was speaking with a client yesterday, and they got rear-ended on the way to work, and were feeling very, very kind of at the effect of that. And the context through which they were experiencing this event and interpreting this event was the context of, of being punished somehow. Like, I can never do anything right. Things don't work out for me. This client had really taken great care of this car and had plans of being able to buy out the lease and sell it. And it had a clean record. And now that record was, had a ding on it because somebody rear-ended her. Fortunately, she wasn't hurt. The other person wasn't hurt. The car wasn't badly damaged. And so the context was everything's going down the toilet kind of thing. And what I recognize is that when we experience that we're in a hostile universe, like it's you and me against the world kind of thing, or just me against the world for that matter, then we see circumstances as they arise as perpetuating our role as victim. This person was really looking like, why would this happen? What, why? And the thing about why is, again, context, right? We're kind of assuming, in asking that question, we're assuming a bunch of things. We're assuming that things make sense, right? That events that occur make sense. And that's the context, we're assuming that there's a reason for everything, which can be a wonderful place to be coming from, as long as we don't presume that we get to know necessarily what those reasons are. We can make it that the reason is I'm being punished, or we can, for instance, another context that we can operate from is a context of everything is happening for me and through me. In other words, we can be operating from the context of a benevolent universe. And if we're operating from that context, then we can maybe trust that it was for the best, that it was for the best, despite the fact that it derailed whatever hopes and plans and expectations that we might have had. So in that context, we could say, well, maybe this accident was so that, and realize this is all fabricated. It's all made up anyway, right? But we could say, well, you had this little fender bender, which prevented you from getting in a fatal accident later in the day. Or, we can make up whatever stories we want, but the context of everything happens for a reason, and that we're living in a benevolent universe, then we're likely to interpret the experience in a very different way, right? If we are living in a context of it's just a random universe, then we might have a different experience of that event, right? So I'm wondering, what kinds of contexts do you create for yourself? And do you create them consciously? So Rosalind says, can this be seen as constructing a belief system that explains away whatever story makes us feel a different way? Sure. Context is kind of creating a container through which we view the world. That's pretty much what beliefs are, right? Beliefs are the lens through which we interpret, right? So if I believe that life is empty and meaningless, which is something that's something that was I was first exposed to in the EST training years and years ago in the 80s, believe it or not. And so being exposed to life is empty and meaningless, I got livid, I got furious. The addendum to that is humans are meaning-making machines. So the meaning that we attribute to life is meaning that we make. And if there is a grander meaning, we may or may not have access to that in certain elevated states, perhaps. But for the most part, as human beings, we're meaning-making machines. I don't think we're really machines, by the way. I think, that's another context. Okay, so here's another context that is kind of, we've visited this many times when we talk about the state of the world and the state of our environment and our relationship to nature. So a context of we are here with dominion over nature and nature is here to serve us is a very different context from we are part of nature and everything is interconnected. The context of the universe operates as a mechanistic machine, where everything is predictable and system and repeating, that there are rights and wrongs. That's another context, right? When we look at the universe as a machine, then we think we can deconstruct it. We think we can dissect a human or a frog and then discover the workings of life. Well, the thing with that kind of context is we killed the thing to try to understand the thing that we were trying to understand. So how do you kill something to understand life? We might understand some of the elements. We might come to understand some of the elephants, not elephants, elements, but that doesn't give us the essence of what the mechanics are. Not even like we're trying to break things down into mechanical pieces rather than looking at things from a systemic perspective. And so that's another context. If we look at things as wholes, as systems rather than components, it's a very different context and it generates very different behaviors and very different experiences. And so what we're looking to do, we being the transformers and the evolutionaries of the world, or the conscious evolutionaries, what do we get to do? We get to create life-affirming contexts that then generate different behaviors. So what is the most revolutionary, evolutionary thing we can do? Create new contexts, create new ways of thinking, new lenses through which we perceive the world and through which we interact with the world and our experience. And I'm a very different person if I am at the effect of my past. Again, we're looking at context, and if we were talking last week about identity and who we are. Who are we? Are we a function of our history? Are we bound to be a function of our history, or can we allow ourselves to free ourselves from that to become something more? So am I this flawed, failed person based on history, or am I an evolving expression of my deepest dreams and potentials? I mean, you recognize that the experience of those two different contexts is radically different, right? And so we can keep our story. The story is a context, and or we can create a new story. We can create a story that is greatly more empowering, that allows us to step beyond our limiting ideas of who we are and what we're capable of. If we create a context that we came here for a purpose, and that purpose is to fulfill our deepest soul song, to sing our deepest soul song, to shine our brilliant light, then that context gives us perhaps the courage and vision to be able to step beyond whatever the limiting ideas are about who we are, you know. So for me, and when I stepped into my purpose, what I did, what I declared as my purpose, when I stepped into that, it called me to be more than I knew myself to be. It was ridiculous that I came up with this vision and said, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm doing. Whether I ever achieve it or not, it transformed everything because it gave me a reason to grow in ways that I would never have imagined myself to grow. It required me to rise to another level of being and expression. It required me to get over all the things that I thought I was, you know, to get over myself and to recognize that there was a whole lot, something that was a whole lot more important than my preoccupation with my limitations. You know, so it's kind of ironic when we talk about our limitations, we are kind of being preoccupied with ourselves, right? Talking about our limitations isn't a whole lot different than talking about our own like bragging about ourselves from a vantage point of the ego, because it is still ego, right? And I don't have I don't have a bone to pick with ego, given that we can befriend it and allow it, or find a way with it to find our way through life. But when ego is out of balance, then we're either very, very full of ourselves, or we're very, very down on ourselves, which is also, by the way, being very full of ourselves, because it's still all about us, right? And so when we step into a context of something bigger than ourselves that we're in service to, that we have committed our hearts to, our souls to, then we just surmount the challenges that we would have if we were just living a life for ourselves. You know, it's very, very easy to become completely self-absorbed, whether it's negatively or positively, right? Like, I can't believe I did that. Oh my gosh, you know, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed, or I'm so destroyed. You know, these things, we all have periods of our lives that we go through that um, that we have to strengthen ourselves to get through, right? We all have experiences that hone us, that shape us, um, that teach us, not always the best lessons, right? But we all have experiences that deepen us in one way or another. You know, we all have traumas that we hopefully that we survive, and hopefully that eventually we can turn to our positive growth. Good morning, Dido. So good to have you here with us this morning. Dido says, that's so true. I tend to get full of my limitations, and I so appreciate you reminding us how we can commit to our soul expression instead. I'm so glad you chimed in, Dido, because I really had you very much in mind and heart in this call to rise to your greater capabilities and purpose, because there's life in there. That's where we find life. When we create a context of purpose and meaning and our soul expression, it calls us to be our best selves and to lift ourselves out of the limitations that have been reinforced by the world. Often in many ways we have been taught that we are not enough. We've been taught that we are flawed and failed and inadequate and terrible, and we've been taught these things. And when we connect with our soul expression, our soul song, our own really individual brilliant light that we truly, in my context anyway, that's what we came here for. We came here to express that, and we have all these hurdles in life that knock us down and beat us up and drag us around, and then what we get to do is to lick our wounds, brush ourselves off, and claim that soul song. And that is our salvation in so many ways. That is the thing that then calls us into being, calls our potential forward. And that is the singular most courageous moment, I believe, in a lifetime, is to step into ownership of that unique soul song that we came here to sing. It calls us to be our greatest selves. And as we step out of that small self into a commitment to that big one, even though we don't know how we're going to do it or how we're going to get there, or we don't see the way forward, making that commitment makes magic happen. That's where life begins to blossom into a whole different dimension. Good morning, Gia. It's the evening where Gia is. Good morning, good evening, Gia. So glad to have you here with us. No, I hadn't seen your comments. I'm so glad now that you switched over. Anybody that's writing comments, if I'm not responding, it's because I don't see your comments. So please go to the Enlightened World Network Facebook page, and I'll see your comments from there. So glad to have you with us, Gia. And we're talking about context and commitment. Okay, so when we make this commitment to our soul song, our deepest purpose, our soul expression, when we make that commitment, it changes our personal context, because whatever those stories we have about ourselves are, they're not as important as this commitment, right? And the commitment calls us to be more than all those stories. And so as we're called to be more than those stories, we're freed from those stories. So this soul expression is a vehicle to our greatness that we all have, all of us. You know, it's there for all of us. And making that commitment is a terrifying thing, because it It is a shift, a profound shift of context, and a conscious one, you know, to say, I'm going to risk failure. And I want you to know that that's a concept. It's like when you have that commitment, you keep getting up, right? You keep finding new ways. It's just like, okay, so that was a bump in the road. Instead of a life decimating failure, that was a bump in the road. You know, it's like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try it this way. What did I learn that'll help me move forward more effectively from this point? Right? So I think that there, as we look at our lives, it's worthwhile to ask the question, what is the context that I'm creating for myself? Because there are levels, right? Regenerative development. I'm taking 2 courses. So I just started the Water Stories course, and I've talked about water stories a bunch, but it's about restoring the water cycle, which I think is the most hopeful path for making massive and most immediate transformation of our climate crisis and whatever. And also a course from an organization called Regenesis, which is about regenerative development and the whole context of regeneration. What is regeneration? And regeneration is creating, is based on nested wholes. So we have self, we have family, we have community, we have larger communities going into the world, you know, and community includes nature, obviously, maybe not so obviously. So Dido says, I really love the way you've shown me how what I perceive as failures and mistakes are all part of my soul's journey toward fuller soul expression. It's been so healing for me. Dido, thank you so much for saying that. And I know that you are going to carry that awareness forward to support others in their own transformation and the recognition of our journeys being our own hero or heroine's journey. And that is part of our pathway, our journey to self-realization and self-discovery. And I love what you're generating, Dido. I can't even begin to tell you. And when you're ready, we're going to share it here widely and loudly so that other people can join you in this beautiful context that you're creating for people, which is a profound gift of service and also a profound gift of fulfillment of your own purpose. So anyway, I have so much love for you guys, and I so appreciate your engagement in these conversations. I don't know where the half hour went. It disappeared, and I have to run. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection, and I go live here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. Please check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network, EWN, One with the Earth, Enlightened World Living. Gia says, you're such a motivator, inspiring soul, Mira Rubin. There are a number of moments where where you have helped me raise my consciousness. Gia, thank you for that. So much love to you guys. I hope to see you again here really, really soon.